Hi, welcome into my studio, and on this video I'm going to be drawing this very unusual animal, and I'm going to be doing it in watercolour pencils. And the reason I'm selecting watercolour pencils is because now it's British summertime, and sometimes you want to take your art materials outdoors and actually go on holidays with them as well. And if you're going abroad, you're going on an aeroplane, sometimes taking oil paints or any paints, because they're liquids, they can all cause a few issues and problems. So it's nice and easy to be able to take pencils. Now of course I could have taken my pastel pencils. They can be a little bit dusty, easier to smudge. So I thought I'd try out some watercolour pencils. Fortunately Derwent had sent me a set of 36 out, so I thought I'd give those a go. Now of course with just 36 pencils I'm going to be a bit limited, trying to recreate a very realistic image. I'm going to have to make adjustments and actually just go with the colours that I've got, so I'll make sure I try and get the lights and the darks correct, the tones, because that's the most important part. But at least it's going to give you an idea of how we can use these pencils on pastel matte paper. And the reason I'm selecting pastel matte is so that I can get extra layers on top, so I can still do a very similar technique to the one we would do with pastels. Okay, so let's get started. I've got my pastel matte grey paper, I've got my image transferred to it as per normal, and what you're seeing on screen is a Derwent water brush. It's got this soft brushy end to it. You fill the back end up with water, and that means when I'm using these watercolour pencils, these Derwent watercolours, I can, just a little tissue I'm going to have as well there, as you see me use, and a pot of water. That's all the supplies. But it's going to mean with that watercolour brush I haven't got to keep dipping into a pot, but you can use a normal brush and just a pot of water to actually make these watercolour pencils turn wet. So it's just like using watercolour, and you can make that go as free and easy, loose as you want, or you can use them quite tight and detailed. So I've just grabbed my reference photo. I'm going to put that by the side just so you can see what I'm working on. But obviously, as per normal with my videos, I'm really showing you the technique so you can actually go out there and try something different yourself. I will be supplying the reference photo and line art on my Patreon channel for this. It's an image I photographed myself a little while back, so if you want to draw along for practice purposes, that's perfectly fine. So if this is a brand new medium to you, as it is to me, the best thing to do is to actually try things out on a bit of scrap paper, so there's no major surprises, and I've already done that, so I've got an idea of how these watercolour pencils are going to work. And one thing to keep in mind, as I'm just starting to block areas in, you can see I'm using a blue pencil here, is that the darker colours, when they are wet, when you go over them with a wet brush, they go much more contrasty, much darker. When wet, they will dry slightly lighter, but they'll still be darker than the pencil you're putting on there. Now when you use lighter colours, so perhaps those more ochre colours, they will not go as dark when the brush goes on there. So you've got to keep that in mind, that dark black in particular, dark blues are very powerful colours with watercolour pencils, so you don't have to put too much down at all. But you know, watch this video all the way through first and you'll see exactly what I mean about what happens when it's dark and you wet it, and the lighter colours too. So I'm not pushing too hard with this black pencil. You need to get a bit of coverage on there. You can see I've left the blue part in the eye, the top part, the highlight, because if you put a dark down with these, you're not going to be able to get the lights to sit on top of it as easy as you will with pastel pencil. Nowhere near as easy. So these pencils are never going to replace my pastels. They're a different medium. You've got to treat them as different. And I'm using them more, I can see me using them in the future more for sketching. Outdoor work, as I said, they're nice and easy for that as well. but because we're using pastel matte paper, it's got that slight texture to the surface, and it means that we can get light over dark with them, especially when we use this watercolor technique that I'm going to show you, where I'm just blocking in some of the basic colors. As I said, I haven't got the full set of 72, so I'm going to have to just do the best I can with a lot of these colors. But I want to show you the technique. I think a lot of you are going to like this technique, and it's very different to using a normal colored pencil. It's different to using pastel pencil as well, so perhaps it's going to suit different artists too. Something nice to try out. Now, start to finish, this drawing took me about 2 hours to complete, so you can see it can be quite fast as well. It's not a slow medium. Obviously you can go and detail it as much as you want, and if you've got all those pencil colors, perhaps some of you have already got them already, perhaps you've had them a couple of years and you've not known how to use them, or you've not tried them out, so now's your opportunity. So you can see I'm basically kind of blocking in, and this stage is very similar to my, or going to be similar to my oil painting blocking in and my pastel blocking in, where I'm getting the basic shape and form, lights and darks down on the paper. And I'm going to continue this building up of the pencil. So basically it's almost like we're putting dry watercolor pigment down actually on the paper, which is exactly what we're doing, and then we're going to wet it, and that's going to all flow together, and we're going to use our brush to move that pigment around. So it's going to take me a little while to do this blocking in. You can see I'm going in that third direction as per usual, and I'm going to do the same with the brush. I'm going to speed the video up a bit so you can see this all start to build up, because the exciting part is going to be when we get the water actually on that surface. Here, just using my pencil on its side, quite long strokes going in there, because I know how much this is all going to flow together, and I'm going to need to go darker still on this back section. So although I'm generally going in that third direction, as you can see, I'm not being overly cautious with it. Just want to get quite a bit of pigment down on that surface. And here I'm coming in with more of those darks, not putting it over everything. So remember I said that this black is very powerful, so I'm leaving some of the blue there as well. I wanted to get this down just before I come over with the water, because I don't particularly want to be doing layers with the watercolor pencils with the brush, because it'll keep reflowing the underlay and it can get a bit messy. So I'm hoping to get the watercolor section done all in one go. Okay, so now I'm going to come in with that Derwent water brush. I filled the back up. You fill the back up by unscrewing it from the black end on there, and then get a little bowl of water and then squeeze the plastic with the end down in the water, and it'll just suck it up rather than try to fill it with a tap. So you can see going in the direction. When I'm leaving the screen, what I'm actually doing is one of two things. Either I'm just dapping the end of it if there's a little bit too much water, or swishing it in the water container by the side to clean the end. That's what I'm generally doing, because when it picks up black pigment, it's just like doing watercolor, so that black is on the end of the brush. So if I'm then going into the brown area, I'm going to actually contaminate the brown. You can see I'm going in the third direction. You can see how much darker it's going. There's my kitchen tissue. Let me just show you what I'm doing. See, I cleaned the brush. Now there's a couple of ways to work with these water brushes. You can squeeze them every now and again. That'll push more water into the end. You can just dip it in a bowl, so using it just as per a normal brush, though they do seem to then stay wetter longer. You can see I've cleaned off that dirty water, going into the dark now. You can see how it stays on the brush, the dark. So you clean it quite often. Don't have to rush too much with this, because if it dries, as I said, you can just go back in with a watercolor brush, it'll re-liquefy. You can see it's filling up all the tooth of the paper. That's what we like to do with pastels as well, with the undercoat, the underlayer. Fill up the tooth so we can build the texture on top of it. And it's not got that scratchy appearance. As you can see, look below on the neck area. You can see lots of the paper under there, because we can't blend this medium out when it's dry. It's not going to blend like pastel at all, so we've got to do it this way. See, squeeze the end if you want. That brings out more water, so you haven't keep got to go back to the pot. So it'll be up to you then what you want to do. I'm new to this as well, don't forget, so I'm learning as I'm going along. It's a bit of fun for me as well. I'm not expecting this to be a masterpiece by any stroke of the imagination. What I'm interested in is how this underlayer goes, and then how I can get detail to sit on the surface. So I'm going to continue now. I'm just going to speed this up just a small amount. I won't do much voiceover, because it's just a case of watching me going in the third direction and just building up this wet underlayer. Okay, so that underlayer is now dry, and I'm going to put in the most basic of backgrounds, just a green. Could leave it as it is, but I want to get something in there. If I was going to use this as a finished drawing, I would probably do the background in pastel, because we can get that smoothness so much better than with watercolor pencils. Don't forget, we could put pastel over the top of this as well. But for this demo, I'm just going to continue using the pastel pencils. I'll just use, the watercolor pencils, and I'll just use them throughout it, so we're not confusing and making a mixed media one. It's just going to be watercolor pencils. So I'm depositing quite a bit down because I'm going to add water to it as per usual, and I want to do it all in one go again. Okay, once again, time to add water. It's a large area. I don't want to create lots of little lines in it, so I'm using a much larger brush, just a synthetic brush with just water on there, just so I can spread all this colour out. I'm not after a uniform background, but you can see using a larger brush is much easier than using a small brush. You can see it all liquefying. I'm dragging it down and working flat here on the surface. The pastel mat paper really sucks up the water as well, so you need to keep adding water to it. Everything is now dry, and I dried it all off with a hairdryer because, as I said, pastel mat will hold a lot of water, so it'll take a long time to dry. So you either want to allow it to dry overnight or just dry it with a hairdryer, as I did. And now I'm going to start to build up on this underlayer with my details, and you see how I'm doing them. Going to do them very similar to the way I would with pastels. I haven't got a very dark brown in this set. This brown looks quite dark but goes on fairly light, so I'm going to have to use this brown for the richness, and I'm going to have to use a black pencil as well to just try and get it darker, to get those tones correct. So dark's going on first, lights will come on later. Critical part, go in that third direction, as I say on absolutely all of my videos. So I'm going to a lighter pencil. I haven't got, if you look on the cheek of the animal, you can see it's kind of like a pale ochre with a tinge of pink in there. I haven't got that colour, so I'm definitely going to have to make do with what I've got on that section. I want to stick with the watercolor pencils. I don't want to go over the colored pencils on my sets. I don't want to go to a different brand. I just want to keep using this one set just so everything is nice and simple and we can see exactly how this particular pencil performs. So getting in the dark areas first before I get the lights in, because I've already done a test. I know the highlights will go on top of the darks to some extent, and they actually go on quite well. It surprised me, and I put that down mainly, I think, to the fact that we're using the pastel matte paper, and also these watercolor pencils are quite soft. So let's try to add in some of these highlights to see how effective they do go on, and you can see going on quite nice. As I said, it's never going to replace my pastels, because I've got the opportunity with pastels to blend and make areas soft, and that's really critical with wildlife art. The textures, so some areas you want, you know, very sharp, hard edged. Lots of areas usually you want softness with them. So you can see that highlight built up nice and easy. So I'll get a darker area, mid-tone dark in here, because it's actually quite a lot of highlight on this, so I don't want to go too dark underneath. Then with a nice sharp pencil, start to add that texture on top. So I'm not using all uniform lines. You can see I'm making them a bit haphazard, but going in the proper fur direction, as you can see on the reference photo. Need to sharpen these pencils quite frequently as well, but they sharpen very easily with a crank sharpener or hand sharpener. There's no worries about the ends breaking off on them. Here I've just deposited a bit more of the watercolor pencil on there, so I'm just going to put a bit more water on it to blend it in. Just wanted to go a bit darker, I did, on the eye. Okay, back to getting in some of these darks and this fur texture. Pushing quite hard when I'm putting the darks in. You can see I'm leaving lots of spaces as well, so that I can get more of a pure colour done when I come back with the lighter tones. So I'm not expecting these lights to go perfectly over a very dark. Same as I wouldn't really with pastels either, but you can get away with a lot more with pastels. And don't forget as well, the pastel matte paper will only hold the, so many layers. Every paper will eventually have the tooth filled up, and that's when you're going to start to struggle to get colours and pigment or anything down on there. You can see I'm just adding some colours. There's a few purple hues here. I can use a pencil on its side just to add more subtle colours there. And now I'm really going to start to build up this fur texture. So nice sharp pencil, that's critical. You want sharp pencil, otherwise you're going to not be able to put the details in. So you can see it's going over very nicely, nice and easy. And you can really see the benefit of putting that watercolor underlayer in, and how much that's helping us, and how it's making this a much faster process. You really got the form and structure down on there and give me a slightly darker base with no paper grain at all showing through. So that's all helped me, and I suppose it's cut down the actual drawing time on this dramatically. I'm just going to carry on now, same technique, building up these layers and finally putting highlight on top.